Wow, what a show that was last night. Turns out I was right. Boom! Matt's life completely unravels from one comment from his mother. There was no rug at the final rose ceremony, and after the rose was just as awkward as you had hoped for. Hey guys, so I was just in here fixing my light switch. The remote's having some problems, and I had to stop and talk about The Bachelor. So I'm not gonna lie, there was a lot that happened, so this might be a little bit longer than most of my other episodes of My Girlfriend Makes Me Watch The Bachelor, because this recap is really critical for a couple of reasons. One, we finally understand why Matt James sort of is the way he is. And two, we got to deal with some awkward race conversations, which we're going to get to later, which are very important. So when the episode started out, I started drawing Matt James in hearts on my notes, because I take notes when I watch the show. And as the episode went on, I felt those hearts break apart. I have to admit, seeing Matt James's brother definitely reminded me of Alvin's brother from the Taisha season, last season of The Bachelorette. He had a sweet, sweet gold grill on his front teeth. That was awesome. However, the thing I didn't like about this was that it was obvious the producers coached him on what to say. It just seemed so unlikely that that character would ask those questions. I feel like he would be way more laid back than asking questions such as, have you ever had any serious boyfriends? What qualities do you think you would have as Matt as a husband? And all that crap. There's no way he would ask those questions. He'd probably be so chill to hang out with. They should have showed that. They should have let him be way more authentic. That wasn't very fun. One of the best scenes though was with Matt's mom. When Matt's mom said, there's nothing more than I want for Matt than to find love, pause, than with a woman. Maybe Matt was gay in a prior time. Maybe he was bisexual. I don't know. But she paused. Then she said, from a woman, that she would be happy Matt had love from a woman. Kind of suspicious here. So Michelle and Matt's mom have a little convo, and they both start crying. Understandably, someone just needed to give Matt's mom a hug. I don't know why she did. She just gave her a good one. I really liked how Michelle said to Matt's mom that Matt's past makes him a stronger person. You could tell how sincere Michelle is. She's just nice. She's always been nice. And here's the thing. She is great for Matt, but Matt is not great for her. Because Michelle deserves somebody better. And we'll find out more about that later in this recap. So Matt sits down with his mom and he says, hopefully I can get to the point where I want to be engaged. So you can already tell his wheels are turning. He has no idea what he's doing with his life. Even though he's on The Bachelor and he knew this was going to happen. He just couldn't handle it. As he's sitting with his mom, he's touching her leg. I literally jumped off the seat, screamed, oh my God, he's touching her leg. And we were all kind of shocked. We're like, that's the move he does with the ladies he's been hanging out with. And so we know now that Matt hasn't moved past his edible phase. So now let's go on to Rachel meeting Matt's mom. First off, Rachel comes out of the car, or walking, I don't remember where she came out of, with sunflowers. Sunflowers represent new life and new beginnings. No, they don't. I just made that up. But it sounds nice. Again, his brother asked Rachel the same series of questions that felt just as inauthentic as the first set of questions he asked Michelle. Then, Rachel and his mom sit down to talk as well. And again, they're both crying. That's when it hit me. This is why Matt most likely likes to save women. So imagine growing up in a household where your mother is highly emotional. What's she gonna do? What are you gonna do? Well, I'll tell you what you're gonna do. You're gonna try to fix your mom and save her, which is exactly what Matt goes after. The most distraught women, trying to help them. We had the same thing happen with Sarah. He kept going to help her. She was crying. She was upset. This is obviously what he does. Now, before I get to what I believe was the critical point in this show, I want to talk about Matt's brother once more. The dude is super supportive. And essentially, in the end, he said, I don't care what you do, but I'll support you either way. That's really nice. It's good to have family that does that for you. And then you have his mother, who says,
I mean, I know they both love you, but feelings come and go.
Love fades. And that, my friends, is where everything went downhill for Matt and sadly Michelle.
There's nothing like being in love, but you know, people fall in and out of love, and love is not the end-all, be-all.
And as we find out later, Rachel, from one comment from his mother, destroyed everything. So after this conversation, Matt's outside, it's dark out. Chris Harris rolls up and they start chatting. And Matt keeps saying, you know, my mom said feelings fade. And he talks more about his father and these things. And Chris Harris says, that's a lot to unpack. Chris Harris is the foundation, the stone that all bachelorettes and bachelors have leaned against during their times of crisis. Now, Tayshia and the other lady who's hosting the show, no one's going to say, oh, I have to go talk to Taisha, or I have to go talk to Tayshia, or Heather, or whoever it is. No one's going to say that. Everyone wants to talk to Chris because he's the man. Now, it almost looked like Chris Harrison was mad at Matt's mom for saying that because she planted that seed, a tiny seed of doubt into Matt's mind, and it destroyed him. So, what does this recap really look like right now? Let's break it down to how he ended things with Michelle. Chris Harris asks Matt, what are you most afraid of? Matt replies, making the right decision. So what would that mean? And I believe it means this, that the right decision is to actually marry Michelle because he needs a woman like that. She is sweet, she is mature, she is kind. However, he's not going to do that because that would be the right decision. So what sounded like a response to a question that should have been, I don't want to make the wrong decision, he responded with what actually was going on inside, which is, I don't want to make the right decision because he's afraid to. Because Michelle is a person who looks like she knows how to commit, and we get to that later on, which I'm going to get to. So before we get to that, Matt James has to have a date with Michelle where they're repelling. And the producers essentially set up a heart-shaped thing on the floor like you lure cats into and put a couch there with some flags so they could talk. It was the lamest date ever. And they're on top of the thing and they're rappelling with these things called the gree-gree. And if you know climbing, you would know that they were both backed up by people at the top. That yes, they were controlling the gree-gree. But if they lost control of it, the other person would hold them. And what was hilarious was that Matt James busted his ass the first time down. And then not but 30 seconds later, he's telling her how to do it. It's so patronizing. If I was Michelle, I would have been like, didn't you just bust your ass like 2 seconds ago? What I also thought was intriguing was that when you look at the rope on Michelle's harness, there was a lot of slack in it. They kept Matt James on a tight leash, which I believe is symbolic of how women may have to treat Matt James. Michelle also said she felt a lot of trust with him after that. No, you should really trust the belay guy at the top. He's the one that got your back. But they're talking on the couch for a little bit. You can tell Matt James is doing his leaning back thing because he's so uncomfortable. And he just can't handle it. And he did mention a little bit about his mother's advice. Now, I don't know his mom, but if somebody's failed at businesses before, I'm not likely to take business advice from them. You know, if somebody's constantly in and out of relationships, I'm not going to take relationship advice from them. It's really bad to take advice that is so pivotal, such as love fades, from somebody's marriage where love did fade and never came back. Imagine if Matt's mom had said, love fades, but if you keep working at it, it's going to come back. That would have been a very different Bachelor. So now they're in Michelle's room because he had to talk to her. And Michelle comes out with these cute jerseys. They said Mr. Matt James and Mrs. Matt James. They were awesome because what man doesn't love getting basketball jerseys from somebody who loves him, cares about, cherishes him? Just saying, Abby, if you want my attention, just send me a basketball jersey. She goes on to tell him that she's in love with him, and he probably said something like, thanks for sharing, because at this point I tune him out too. Again, he's doing his leaning back thing. But he's so distraught. You can see it in his face. His gears are spinning, and Michelle finally says, and I can see those gears are spinning, like, talk to me, what's up? And he says, I don't think I can get there with you. We all felt that because Michelle, being the sweetheart she is, responded by saying things like, I don't know if I should fight for you, I don't know what to do. And that's the mature response. She literally said to him, tell me what you need, maybe I can give it to you. But Matt James was silent because he has no clue what's going on in himself or outside of himself. And the nicer she gets, actually the more he pushes her away, because that is the avoidant cycle. They get closer, they back up. They get closer, they back up, so on and so forth. He also said that suddenly it feels real now. No, it's been real the whole time. Nothing has changed. It may feel more real to you now because there's only two people and you can't get lost in a sea of compliments and allure and passion with 30 women. And while he's telling her, I don't think I can get there with you, he's still touching her leg like he touched his mom's leg. Now, they're two very different people, but it's the same behavior. I think he should just stop touching her. Let her have her space. And she said, I don't understand. It's kind of like you just flipped the switch. Michelle, it wasn't a switch. It was one conversation with his mother. That's what it was. I do appreciate Matt James being so honest with these women, because it's not easy to be honest when you know it's going to be hurtful. So Matt James is now leaving the room. Out of the darkness comes Chris Harris. I love it. It's just, he's so badass. He sits down, and they start chatting a little bit, and he says, "You let a great woman go." Now, you have to remember, he's been on this show for 20 plus seasons. He knows, in my opinion, what a great woman would be. So when he said, "You let an incredible woman walk away," I believe him. But Matt kept saying, "Keep going back to my mom. Feelings fade, feelings fade." One conversation changed everything. And that feelings fade destroyed a great relationship. And potentially many others before her and after. The mature version of the conversation that Matt could have had with Michelle, and I think Michelle would have been very receptive to this given the other behaviors and qualities that she shows, would have been, "Hey, I'm having a difficult time because my mom said this thing about feelings fade, and I have this anxiety about commitment, and I really need some help working through this because she's really in my head right now, and I know she means well, but it's not the life I want." "Oh, Matt, you're the best. Let me help you." That's what it would have been like. Instead, he let an incredible woman go. It's quoted by Chris Harris. But he's so distraught. He can't even go see Rachel now. Does he care about Rachel? No. Because during this entire time, there's not one scene of him saying, "I wonder how Rachel feels right now. I hope she's not hurting that I don't want to see her today." Instead, Chris Harris shows up and says, "Hey, there's no date today." What's Rachel to think? And then all of a sudden he says, "Hey, meet me at the lake." Very selfish. Very selfish. Now, Matt's hanging out with the ring guy. The ring guy says to him, "It's extraordinary that you have the clarity to think about what you're doing." No! Not at all. Dude, that's called life. You always have to think about what you're doing. It's not, you just don't, you can react to everything, and you'll probably live a pretty miserable existence if all you do is act on impulse. So, no, I don't think that's extraordinary. That's just called life. Then Matt goes on to say, "This ring, it represents broken promises and what my dad did to my mom." No, it doesn't. It's just a ring. The more pathologies that you imbue upon it, the worse it's gonna be, buddy. But it's literally just a ring. One conversation with your mother changed everything again. So now we're at the final rose, guys. And I was extremely disappointed, as I'm sure you were, that there was no rug. There has always been a quality, what looks like to me, Persian rug at all of the final rose ceremonies or engagements. But as we come to find out, this one had a little twist. First off, her dress looks amazing. It was like green, kind of sequency. I don't know. She looked freaking awesome. And Matt looks a wreck. So here's Rachel, all insecure because she hasn't seen Matt yesterday. Matt is completely freaking out because of one conversation with his mother. He does not look good. And then he says, "Yeah, yesterday happened and it changed everything." Yes, one conversation led you down a spiral of bad decision making, which probably reflects other areas in your life as well. Then Rachel says, "When you hurt, I hurt." You know what that is? Red flag, run for the hills, man. That is the worst codependency, and that is the easiest way to spot it. No, you shouldn't be sharing emotions. It's not okay. Because they're hurt doesn't mean you hurt. If they're happy, you don't have to be happy. That's not how good relationships work. It's codependency. So what you need to do is that you sit them in a catapult, hit the lever, and let them go. Because as we find out later, indeed, they did break up. And as Rachel is saying this, you can see Matt's face. The lights are on, but nobody's home. And he keeps going back to, "I want to be everything my dad wasn't. I want to be there for my wife, and I don't want to leave, and if that ring goes on, it's never going to come off," etc. And he keeps going back to this. It's obviously something he struggles with significantly, and maybe this journey will allow him to get the help he needs to overcome these issues. Because when you look at what happened with Rachel and that codependency, you can tell he's got a little bit of codependency going on with his mom. She's insecure, now he's insecure. Rachel hurts, he hurts. He hurts, Rachel hurts. Matt hurts, his mom hurts. You guys see how this works now? So instead of engaging, Matt says, "Hey, I love you. Why don't we just date?" Rachel takes it. She takes the biscuit. It's kind of like when you're climbing and you pull the rope and the rope gets stuck in the first carabiner. Take the biscuit. Rachel goes on to say, "He's the most amazing person she's ever met." Of course he is. You're 24. You haven't met enough people. I also want to show a little video of me reacting to what happened when Matt James didn't propose.
And that's why I can't propose to you.
Oh!